Hi, I'm Nikki Rohde, and I am an interpreter.
What language do you speak?
I speak for the trees.
This happens every time I tell someone I'm an interpreter. They think language interpretation. A language interpreter listens in one language and translates the words into another language so that the audience can understand. So I'm going to be more specific with you. Hi, I'm Nikki Rohde, and I am a heritage interpreter. I learn about something for years on end and then share the important parts with you in a way that is relevant, meaningful, and memorable to you. Heritage interpretation has things in common with language interpretation in that both are a communication process so the audience or listeners can understand. But that's where the similarities pretty much end. Remember that language interpretation is more appropriately known as translation. The translator is speaking as verbatim as possible. The translator doesn't filter the information. A professional translator doesn't butt in with their thoughts on the matter or give an interesting side story. So, heritage interpretation is actually more like when your spouse tells you about their day. Your spouse doesn't tell you a play by play of what happened every minute since you two were apart. Instead, your spouse chooses a story or two from their day to tell you and includes not only the facts of what happened from their perspective, but also how it was meaningful to them. And in telling that story, hopefully there's a spark of continued conversation to deepen the meaning of what happened for both your spouse as the person interpreting their day and you as the listener. But unlike that casual exchange with your spouse over dinner, heritage interpretation is the term for doing that professionally, whether you're making money at it or not. Heritage interpreters speak for nature or history or modern culture, revealing information for the audience in a way that helps the audience make meanings intellectually and emotionally. Although heritage interpreters educate their audiences, it's not just about sharing intellectual information. That's how a heritage interpreter is different from, say, a classroom teacher. A classroom teacher tells facts and builds intellectual knowledge, but a heritage interpreter must include the value of the emotional connection in the communication process just as much or even more than they do with the facts. So, who's the typical heritage interpreter if it isn't a language translator or your spouse or a classroom teacher? Well, you've met many interpreters already in your life. How about a park ranger giving a campfire talk? They're a heritage interpreter. The historian giving a tour of a special exhibit? Interpreter. The tour guide on your trip to Machu Picchu? You lucky duck. But a lot of other professions use the techniques of interpretation in their communication too. A coach interprets the rules and strategies of the game in a way that fosters knowledge of the game and an emotional bond between the teammates. A member of the clergy interprets a passage of spiritual text and delivers that understanding as inspiration to their fellowship. A marketer sells a product or a brand in a way that the audience will remember. And informally, you probably had a classroom teacher who, while being more on the intellectual connection side, helped connect you to facts that you were interested in and were shaping your life. Your spouse telling you about their day, while being more for developing your emotional connection to each other, might have even given you information that you appreciated learning. And when you needed a language translator when you took that dream vacation, you might have used Google Translate, but when a local stranger stepped up to help you and gave you their thoughts on where to go, that made all the difference in you feeling welcomed in that place.
Thanks for joining me to learn about heritage interpretation. Next time somebody tells you they're an interpreter, how will you make a connection?